We are having so much fun on this special edition of VSiN Final Countdown, focusing on all things props. And so far, it's been all things offense, Matt. It's time to turn our attention to the defensive side of the ball, give special teams a little bit of love. I know how much you love soccer, so kickers will be exciting for you to get to. But let's start talking a little bit of defense here, because we know how electric this Eagles pass rush is. 78 sacks between the regular season and postseason, third most in NFL history. First team ever with 4 players to have 12 sacks or more in a single season. So as we look at some of the numbers available for whether it's team sacks or sacks in the game, anything that stood out to you more than the rest?
I think this is a moment where we can look at something and say sometimes these heavily juiced props are the very best ones to bet. Now, they do not fit inside everybody's bankroll, and I fully understand that. But the reason you're looking at the minus 750 for both teams to record a sack is because it is so incredibly highly likely that both teams are going to record a sack. And I know it seems very, very enticing to bet the plus 550 on the no, but it is just very, very unlikely that both of these teams are not going to have at least one sack, specifically with how these defensive lines have been playing of late, and specifically with how both of these quarterbacks also play. That's another thing for us to consider, right, is if Patrick Mahomes runs around in a circle 8 times or whatever and all this, and then doesn't find someone and then tries to run back to the line of scrimmage, but a guy just gets him by the shoelace and he falls down, that's a sack.
That's a sack. That's an important distinction, I think, for bettors, that's a sack. Yeah. That's not a tackle for loss. That's a sack.
And it's the same deal with Hurts, right? I mean, a guy that can create, a guy that they probably will and likely give the full-on go to try to do whatever he can, back there in the pocket and stuff. And so that's for me in this one. You look at it, it's like, all I can say is if you have the bankroll, it's probably a plus EV bet. I wouldn't say that it's for everyone, but if you have that kind of tolerance, certainly something you get in your account and feel pretty good about.
Any feel for the over under 5.5? Like, is there potential for this to get a little bit sack happy here? Because I just mentioned the Eagles number specifically, but the Chiefs offensive line 16th in pass protection. And we know, to your point about KC's pass rush, I mean, they're led by one of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL, and Chris Jones.
It's no surprise that we see that the team with the most sacks is juiced to the Eagles, and it doesn't really necessarily have all that much to do with the defensive line as much as it does with just the opportunities for them to get those sacks, right? Because the more a guy drops back, the more opportunities is to sack him. And we expect, due to all the projections and everything, that Patrick Mahomes is likely to throw more passes than Jalen Hurts is in this game. And the more dropbacks, more likelihood you are to get a sack. So that makes perfect sense to me. I think that is certainly, it would be an Eagles or pass for me from that standpoint. And even more so if you are believing that the Eagles are going to win this game, or if you believe the Eagles are actually going to handle this game, then you would love the Eagles side of that, because that would mean even more pass attempts for Patrick Mahomes, right? That's even more pass attempts for Patrick Mahomes and fewer pass attempts for Jalen Hurts, because in turn, if they're winning and winning handily, they're going to be running the ball a whole lot more. So if he's not dropping back, there's fewer chances for sacks. And so everything can be correlated with a bet like that, depending on how you think the game's going to play out.
Okay, so then specific players. Are you targeting Hassan Reddick? Who are you looking at in that market from the Eagles side of things, if you think that they're going to be the more sack happy team?
Yeah. So if we take a look, these are all at either 0.75 sacks or 0.25 sacks, because as you know, you can get a half sack. This is why people are probably going, what do you mean? What is this? 0.25, 0.7. Yeah. Yes, you can get a half sack in a game, which is why they are listed as they are. And so Chris Jones, 0.75, Josh Sweat, 0.75, Brandon Graham, 0.75. Then you get to Hassan Reddick at 0.25, Fletcher Cox also at 0.25. Now, if you look at these numbers, it is kind of highly correlated to what we were just talking about from a overall team sack perspective. Is you would be looking at Eagles players, and I'm not going to say almost exclusively, but certainly giving them a much deeper look if you believe in the fact that Patrick Mahomes is going to get sacked exponentially more times than Jalen Hurts is in this game, right? And you don't want to be looking at that. I don't like a ton of the Chiefs ones anyway, because I think it will be a more run-heavy approach from the Eagles as it is. Like, that's kind of how I feel like they want to play this game. That's kind of how I think if they control it, that's the best route for them to win in the game. So I would be leaning more towards Eagles players than I would Chiefs players.
I just can't get away from Chris Jones. And maybe
I mean, no, he's amazing. I mean, like, there's a reason why he's minus 110 on the over of 0.75.
I was absolutely shook that the AFC Championship was the first postseason game where he actually had a sack. He took Joe Burrow down twice in that game, had 5 quarterback hits. In 11 of his last 13 games, he's been able to get to an opposing team's quarterback, 15 and a half sacks in that time. If I had to pick somebody, I would put my money on Chris Jones minus 110 to get things done.
Before you place your next bet, visit VSiN.com for all the latest data and powerful betting tools. Start with our live odds, team comparisons, and previews for every game on the schedule. Then dive deeper with live tracking of betting trends and line movements. And don't miss our unique tools, including odds comparisons from sportsbooks across the country, prop bet search engine, and custom parlay calculator. Everything you need to increase your betting knowledge and confidence is at your fingertips. Visit VSiN.com today.